Both gentlemen said George Catlett Marshall. George Marshall, you may have heard of the Marshall Plan, which helped reconstruct Europe after World War II. But Marshall was a very unique individual, not what I would call a heralded military hero, but someone that if you learn about his life, you'll have great respect for him. Born into a family in Pennsylvania, his father was middle class, but lost their entire fortune with a bad real estate investment. Imagine. And they moved to Virginia to become a little more impoverished. Marshall falls desperately behind in school. And he specifically remembers going to an admissions process, trying to get into 3rd or 4th grade, trying to see how much he knew. His father took him, and the headmaster asked him a series of questions and to see where he would place him in the school. Marshall said he did not know the answer to a single question. He had fallen that far behind academically. He said, I was so embarrassed. He recalled that moment in his speech when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Marshall becomes the architect of victory in World War II, by the way. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But it was that moment, he said, it was such a humiliating moment. He gets through school, his brother goes to VMI, he wants to go to VMI. His brother says to his mother, do not let my brother go to VMI. He will embarrass our family. He will embarrass our family. And Marshall says in one of his biographies, he says, at that moment, I set out my life to prove him wrong. And it inspired him. So he gets in VMI. And he says it's at VMI that he learns he said, what would I learn academically? He struggled academically. But he learned the power of self-control, the power of discipline, the power of being a part of a team, and it began to change his life. So he graduates with some degree of honor from there. Of course, he goes into the Army. Becomes his mentor in World War I as he spent his fighting days was a guy named General Pershing, who some of you may remember. He credits him with a lot of his mentorship. But Marshall's career really begins to take off a little bit later in his life when he shows an aptitude for what we'll call organizational skills. His ability to organize and administer, take large groups of people and get them to do things in an orderly fashion. Marshall is a master of this. He rewrites the Army Field Manual. And so ultimately, he takes over as the Army Chief of Staff in 1939 on the brink of World War II. He inherits an army of 175,000 enlisted. By the time 1945 rolls around, there are 8 million enlisted. Now, how's that for corporate growth? Think about the change and what he had to deal with. He inherits an army with a lot of dead weight, a lot of leaders who were filling spots that needed to be gone. He forces out over 600 senior leaders in the U.S. Army because he knew he needed for what was at stake. And it makes way for some leaders that you will recognize, MacArthur, Eisenhower, Patton. Peter Drucker, the famous business guy, the father of all modern management theory, called George Marshall the greatest selector of talent ever. He said his ability to put people in the right position, in the right place at the right time was his gift. Marshall was once quoted, and this is for all of us as leaders. He says, when someone fails in a job, that is a much greater indictment on the person who put them there than on the person who failed. Which for all of us, huge responsibility in leader selection. So Marshall is in charge of U.S. Armed Forces going into World War II. Churchill called him the architect of peace, the architect of victory. Does a masterful job. And we could talk a lot about it and give you facts and stuff, but there are a couple of stories that I think, to me, tell about the real greatness of Marshall and what we can take away from him as a leader. There's a book out, and I don't recommend everything in the book, but I'll use an excerpt from it, but it's called The Road to Character. It's written by New York Times columnist David Brooks, and there's some good things in there. He talks about Marshall. But in the intro of the book, he quotes a survey taken in 1950 by the Gallup organization. And then seniors in high school were asked one question: do you think you're special? The answer in 1950, 12% of high school seniors said, yeah, I think I'm special. The same survey was given in 2005. And you can imagine the percentage will way up. It's over 80%. Okay? So keep that in the back of your mind. I want to tell you something about Marshall and why I think he's such a unique individual. Marshall was all about the task. He was all about focusing on what the job was and not about himself. So a couple things happened. When it came time to select the Supreme Allied Commander for the D-Day invasion, Marshall didn't get that job. Dwight Eisenhower got that job. Marshall could have gotten that job. He should have gotten that job. It was his. Had he pushed for it, he would have gotten it. Franklin Roosevelt basically said, I need to keep Marshall here with me in the States because he's such this master organizer. And so Eisenhower gets the job. Now, maybe many of us have been in that situation where a peer gets a job that we think maybe we should have gotten. It's not the easiest thing to deal with, no matter how good Christians we are, right? Marshall not only got the job, but after he got the job, Roosevelt comes to Marshall and says, oh, by the way, you need to send a telegram to Joseph Stalin in Russia to let him know who's been selected to lead the charge at D-Day. So Marshall has to go to the telegraph office, and he writes a telegram to Joseph Stalin, the leader of Russia, and says, Dwight Eisenhower has gotten the job. So he does it. They hand him back a piece of paper with the telegram is on. And in that moment, he did something that I don't know I would have done. My tendency would be, crumble it up, throw away. So he got the job, I didn't get the job. Marshall saves the telegram. And what does he do with it? At the end of the war, he gives it to Eisenhower and says, I thought you might not have this as a keepsake. He gave it to his rival, who got the job that maybe he should have gotten. It would have given him much more notoriety. Because I think the greatest quality I see in Marshall is an incredible sense of humility, an incredible sense that, hey, it's not about me. It's really about the cause of victory. Amazing thing to me, Marshall, several people came to him during his tenure as chief of staff and said, you need to keep notes. You need to keep notes because your memoirs are going to be worth a lot of money. And he absolutely refused to do that. And his response to the people who did that, what he basically said was, if I keep notes, it would cause me to maybe second guess myself, to think more pridefully about what I'm doing, and it would cause me to take my focus off of the task at hand. And that task is victory. And we have a lot to be thankful that he kept his eye on the ball. We have administrations today, I won't name them, but there are people writing their memoirs the day they get in office, right? They're trying to sell them to the highest. Marshall was a great American hero. He everything about his life. Great humility, even up until the end. He could have been buried in a very ornate way. He absolutely, his dying wishes, I want a private funeral, family only, no big deal. Please, he said, please don't make a big deal. Very refreshing to see that kind of leadership. George Captain Marshall, I hope you're encouraged by his leadership. Okay, I've got one more, I'll do it quickly. The last guy I'll talk to you about is probably the most respected leader still alive today. If you talk to military leaders, they'll talk about a guy that just embodies everything about leadership. And I want to just share with you just briefly his leadership principles. They're very simple and they're straight to the point. So General Hal Moore, if you saw a movie called We Were Soldiers, it was Mel Gibson back before he went crazy. It's the story of Hal Moore and the Drang Valley. The Battle of the Drang Valley was the first major skirmish of the Vietnam War. And Hal Moore was a guy, once again, struggled to get into West Point, said he finished in the top 10% of the bottom 10% of his class. Memorized, he was colorblind. He memorized the color code. He passed the colorblind test to get into the service. He said he memorized mathematics in the latrines at night at West Point so he could get through. But became this incredible leader that so many people respected. Hal Moore came to West Point several years ago, and one of my partners at Battlefield Leadership invited him to come. And he spoke to the cadets in an evening service. Cadets don't like to go to evening services, but this one was well attended. At the end of the service, somebody said, "Will you share your leadership principles with us?" He says, "Well, I've got a script I got to follow, but if you'll stick around, I'll share them with you." And so most of them stuck around and shared 4 very simple leadership principles. They're very simple, easy to remember. And I think, as I look back on my own career, I wish I'd applied more of these throughout my career. The first leadership principle that Hal Moore shares is simply this. And again, I offer these not as a perfect illustration, but I think you can see the application. Gallimore says that a leader can do one of two things. A leader can either inspire and infuse the organization with optimism, or he can infect it with pessimism. And we see plenty of leaders who do that. You know, and Chamberlain was a great example at around top when people brought him bad news. He failed to go down the path of negativity because he needed to keep the troops inspired. A leader either inspires the organization with optimism, or he infects it with pessimism. The second principle that Gallimore shares is there's always one more thing you can do. And after that, there's always one more thing you can do. And then one more thing. His point again, I'll go back to the round top. Chamberlain, never running out of options. There's always one more thing you can do. Third principle, when the problem of nothing's happening is nothing's happening. The problem of nothing's happening is nothing's happening. So many of our business leaders, we share that with them on the battlefield. Boy, they just get convicted. Because, you know, when you're doing nothing, what's the competition doing, right? And the final principle for more is simply this. Trust your instincts. How many times in my own career have I gone back and said, you know, I just trusted my gut on that. You have a wealth of experiences. Rely on it and trust your instincts. You don't have more. Go back and watch some movie, read books, and learn the story. So I'm out of time. I'm going to close it with one story, and I promise you this. You know, I get to talk a lot about great leaders, and probably my all-time favorite is Abraham Lincoln. So I'll close with this story, and I'm connected to the greatest leader of all. So Abraham Lincoln, when he was a congressman in Illinois, he obviously began to form his views on slavery. And he heard about a slave auction that was occurring in Illinois, in the area. And he had to go see it for himself. And so he goes to see this auction. And while he's there, he's overtaken with what he sees. And there's a young girl being auctioned off. And he begins to bid on her, to purchase her. Lincoln was not a man of great money, so I'm sure it cost him a lot. And so, as it turns out, he actually wins her in this auction. And they bring the little girl to him. And immediately he looks at her and he says, young lady, he says, you are free to go. And she did not understand what he was saying. So he looked at her again and he said, young lady, you are free to go. And again, she didn't get it. Finally, he kneels down in his big 6'4" frame, looks her right in the eye, holds her hand, and says, young lady, you can go wherever you want to go. You can follow whoever you want to follow. And at that moment, she got it. She looked at Lincoln, President at the time, Congressman Lincoln, and said, in that case, I want to go with you. That story is the essence of leadership. What a leader does, no one is a leader who no one else is following, right? So the essence of leadership is someone who others are willing to follow. And in that story, Lincoln gives us a great example of what we sometimes call servant leadership. That when we give our lives away in service to others, it becomes magnetic, it becomes contagious to the point that others want to follow us. Well, I know in this audience, you don't have to make a giant leap to get the gospel application, right? Because for each of us, you know, when you think about the greatest leader of all time, Jesus Christ, he came into this world. He took 12 unlikely men, changed the course of history. He created an organization that's now in every country and has changed the course of humanity. But how did he do it? Ultimately, it was in giving his life away completely and totally in service to others. That's what great leaders do. It's what, you know, I didn't serve in the military, but I have incredible respect for those who did. Because it's one organization still where we give medals to people who are willing to die for the sake of others. Don't see that a lot in corporate America, unfortunately. So I think we have a lot to learn and a lot to be inspired by our leaders. So thank you for letting me ramble. Thank you for letting me tell you stories. You know, if I can ever take you to the battlefield, it would be an honor.